Ok. Bueno, nuevamente muy buenas tardes a todos. Yo soy Adriana Guerrero, directora de Trade de Travel Brand, agencia de representaciones turísticas. Y junto con The Real Japan estamos haciendo esta serie de webinars, ¿no? Para darles y mostrarles, darles a conocer los itinerarios temáticos que The Real Japan ha creado cuidadosamente para todos sus clientes. Entonces, vamos a dar inicio. El día de hoy nos acompaña Eric Damey nuevamente. Él se encuentra ahorita en Japón, por eso el horario para hacer estos seminarios. Hi, Eric. Hello, how are you?
Hello, good morning. I'm fine. Thank you very much. And thank you for organizing the webinar today.
Okay. Well, thank you, Eric. Muy bien, entonces vamos a dar inicio. Yo voy a dar una breve explicación de los itinerarios y Eric, pues bueno, va a reforzar todos los detalles. Yo les pido si tienen alguna pregunta, escríbanos en el chat. De lo contrario, por favor, siéntanse libres de habilitar su micrófono y comentarnos. Muchas gracias. Y bueno, y recordar quién es The Real Japan. The Real Japan, con sede en Japón, es un DMC que se especializa en la creación y operación de viajes privados de lujo, de alta gama para viajeros exigentes. Las conexiones internas que tiene permite abrir puertas secretas al alma de Japón, brindando a los visitantes la oportunidad de participar en su herencia cultural, que es única. Además de ofrecer los destinos principales de Japón, también promocionan las joyas naturales y culturales menos conocidas que el país tiene para ofrecer. Entonces, nosotros los invitamos a que exploren el verdadero Japón con todas las comodidades y el lujo. Y bueno, esta tarde, ¿de qué vamos a hablar? Vamos a hablar de arte contemporáneo, vamos a hablar de los jardines japoneses, vamos a hablar también del golf. Yo estoy asombrada, pero realmente en Japón hay muchos campos de golf y es reconocido internacionalmente, que lo vamos a ver ahorita. Y también el arte contemporáneo. Y vamos también a hablar de los lugares que son patrimonio de la humanidad, ¿no? Entonces, muy interesante. En verdad, espero que aprendan mucho y que enriquezcan todo lo que ahorita nos puede compartir Eric. Entonces, vamos a dar inicio con nuestro itinerario, que está dedicado para los amantes del arte contemporáneo. Un itinerario de 15 días con 14 noches. Y bueno, como entusiastas del arte contemporáneo, los japoneses han construido una impresionante variedad de museos, galerías, instalaciones de arte de alta calidad en todo el país. Desde las extensas ciudades de la capital hasta pueblos remotos, el arte contemporáneo se puede encontrar prácticamente en cualquier lugar de Japón. Este itinerario está específicamente destinado a los amantes del arte, un viaje único que los llevará a través de destinos diferentes, combinando encuentros con expertos en arte, visitas a las mejores galerías de arte y museos, así como centros aclamados del arte y la arquitectura. Entonces, este itinerario también lo recomendamos y está adecuado para visitantes nuevos, ¿no? que vienen por primera vez a Japón o clientes repetitivos. Totalmente ¿cómo se dice? Personalizable de acuerdo a los intereses y expectativas de sus clientes, ¿no? Entonces aquí nos podemos guiar en el mapa, ¿no? 3 noches en Tokio, 1 noche en Yamanashi, 2 noches en Niigata, 1 noche en Kanazawa, 2 noches en Okayama, 2 noches en Hiroshima y 2 noches en Hakone. ¿Qué es lo más destacado en este itinerario? Pues bueno, el viajero tendrá una breve estadía en Tokio, se mostrará las infinitas posibilidades de esta bulliciosa ciudad capital. Después, el viajero podrá sumergida en el campo de Nagano y Niigata, donde se han invitado artistas internacionales y también japoneses a crear instalaciones de arte, incluso hasta diseñar habitaciones de hotel. Imagínense. En Kanazawa, la atención se centra en un museo único, famoso por su arquitectura y exposición de clase mundial. Al sur, en Okayama, Naoshima y Tashima, en el mar interior de Seto, el viajero podrá alojarse en esta propiedad, Venice House, que es un hotel museo, ¿no? Diseñado por el arquitecto Tadao Ando, es un centro de arte y arquitectura de renombre internacional. Finalmente, el viajero, antes de regresar a Tokio, podrá disfrutar en Hakone toda esta mezcla de arte que hay en estos museos que son al aire libre, ¿no? En los itinerarios hemos seleccionado muy cuidadosamente hotelería de gran lujo, gran lujo que ofrecen servicio excepcional, buena comida, excelente ubicación. Ok, voy a dejarle la palabra a Eric para que nos dé detalles sobre este maravilloso itinerario. Eric, can you help us with these details?
Of course, and thank you for the introduction. Yeah. So, as you briefly mentioned, this itinerary is designed for 15 days and 14 nights, but of course, it's completely customizable. We can make it shorter. I think it's possible to do a similar trip in about 10 days. Of course, we would have to remove some days here and there, but it's, of course, very possible to personalize this itinerary depending on the duration that your clients can travel in Japan. And so just to give a brief explanation about the highlights. So maybe if you can go back one page, that would be perfect. And what's really interesting, I think, is in Tokyo, your clients, I mean, there are so many possibilities in Tokyo. So we can organize 2 days of sightseeing, but there's enough to stay for 1 whole week in Tokyo and see only contemporary arts. Also, we have a special connection with someone who works in the contemporary art field. And this person is really an expert in art and can create a personalized day of visiting art galleries, meeting with artists, meeting the curators of the art galleries, etc. So in addition to this itinerary, we can organize 1 day with art experts in Tokyo, and that I think that will be a great way to introduce the different places, art places in Tokyo. Also, this person is very well connected. So if your clients have a specific interest about one artist or to visit some art galleries, etc., then that can be organized. And in addition to this, in Tokyo, we also can organize the visit to the warehouse where the artworks are stored. So let's say the backstage of the art galleries. So this is, I think, for Tokyo, that's the best place for contemporary art in Japan. But all over the country, there are some interesting places to visit. So we mentioned quickly Yamanashi. Yamanashi is the name of the prefecture, and Kobuchizawa is the place where the Hotel Key Forest is located. And Hotel Key Forest, it's a beautiful hotel. You can see it on the top left picture here. So it's very architectural, and inside the hotel, you also have works of art. The owner and founder of this hotel is actually, he's a big lover of architecture and contemporary art and whiskey as well. So he created a hotel with everything that he loved. And in addition to the hotel that he created, at the end of the park behind the hotel, there is a museum that's his private museum dedicated to Keith Haring. He's a New York artist that probably you must know the images of Keith Haring. If you go back just one slide one more time, we can see the museum, the middle picture. with these very colorful sculptures. It's interesting to visit Yamanashi and Kobuchizawa because you realize that there is art everywhere, even in the small villages. And then we stay one night there, and then we move to Niigata, which basically it's a not famous destination at all for the moment, but they have created a triennale. And this triennale has had a great success in Japan, and it's become also internationally recognized for the quality of the exhibitions. And when we stay in Niigata, we will stay at Satoyama Jujo, which is a small, intimate hotel where they have only 10 rooms, and each room was designed by a different artist. So that's also a nice way to continue the art trip, even inside the hotel. So we stay 2 days in Niigata, and we visit the places that are used, the installations that were created for this triennale. And there is also an amazing museum of art in Niigata that is the base for this triennale. And so this museum is called the Echigo Tsumari Satoyama Museum of Contemporary Art. It's a very long name, but you can just call it Kinare. Kinare is the short for this museum. Then we move on to Kanazawa. So Kanazawa, there is also a lot to visit, but here this time we focus only on the Museum of Contemporary Arts. But of course, if your clients want to make it longer and visit the highlights of Kanazawa, like Kenroku Garden, the Geisha District, etc., that's also possible. Then we move to Okayama, or Kurashiki. Basically, these are two cities next to each other. And again, we visit some nice museums, but also we stay in the ryokan. So your clients can experience a traditional luxury Japanese accommodation. And I think this is a great way to continue immersing yourself in Japan. And after Okayama and Kurashiki, we move to Naoshima and Inujima. So all these small islands in the Seto Inland Sea are also part of a triennale, which is taking place every 3 years. And every year they add one more island. I mean, not every edition of the triennale, they add one more island where they develop art installations, small museums, etc. And it's really interesting to hop from island to island and to see the different sceneries, to see the different works of arts and museums and so on. So here we stay at the Benesse House, and as Adriana quickly mentioned, it's really a museum with accommodation. So at Benesse House, let's say it's not a 5-star hotel, it's a 4-star hotel at best, and the level of service is not the same as you will get at a ryokan or at an hotel, but the hotel is beautiful. It's created by a famous architect called Tadao Ando, which we saw in the previous webinar, and there are works of arts everywhere in the hotel, plus the clients can have private visit of the museum when they stay there. So in the after hours, they can actually walk in the museum, and it's reserved only for the people staying at the hotel. Then after Naoshima, we go to Hakone, which is between Kyoto and Tokyo. And in Hakone, we don't stay at a ryokan because we just stayed in the ryokan before. But if your clients want to change the Hyatt Regency Hakone for a ryokan, there is one of the best ryokan in Japan called Gorakadan. And this way they would have 2 stays in the ryokan during the trip. One time in Kurashiki and then one time in Hakone. And in Hakone, there is a very famous museum called the Open Air Museum, Hakone Open Air Museum. It's a huge place with a lot of artworks, sculptures, etc. And there is a new attraction in Hakone called the Odawara Art Foundation. And this Odawara Art Foundation is the picture that you can see if you go back one slide. Yeah. Once again, the picture in the middle where you can see someone standing on the veranda. It's a very beautiful place to look at the landscape. And from here, you can see both the sea and the Mount Fuji on the other side. So that's a really nice stop on the way back. to Tokyo. And then we finish in Tokyo, and in Tokyo, as you probably have seen, there are two museums from Team Lab. Team Lab is a collective of artists who specialize in digital art. And they have huge art installations inside where it's completely immersive art. And this, for me, I visited for the first time in 2019. And this was something unique that I never experienced before. Usually you stand in front of the work of art and you look at the work of art. For this one, you are immersed in the middle of the artwork. And that's something very special. The whole atmosphere in these Team Lab museums, where they have actually two locations in Tokyo, and each of them is completely different. And the atmosphere is very poetic, very calm, very soothing. So I think this is a great visit to add also in Tokyo. And of course, if your clients would like to spend one more day in Tokyo and enjoy the day at leisure, maybe go shopping, etc., that's very possible as well. So I think I covered pretty much all of the itinerary, but if you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay. ¿Tienen alguna pregunta? Muchísimas gracias, Eric. Maravilloso este itinerario y como pueden ver, Japón te sorprende, ¿no? Te sorprende con todas sus galerías, con estos museos modernos, ¿no? Entonces, una gran opción para sus clientes. Ok, no tenemos preguntas. We don't have any question, Eric. So we continue with the second itinerary.
Yes.
Ok, este itinerario, pues bueno, está enfocado a los jardines japoneses, ¿no? Súper interesante, un itinerario de 14 días, 13 noches. Y pues realmente Japón, como todos sabemos, es famoso por su variedad y filosofía de jardín, que es única. A menudo inspirados en el Zen, los jardines japoneses están llenos de símbolos y alegorías. Entonces aquí lo interesante, en lugar de enfatizar en las flores, ¿no? Que es lo que pues, uno siempre ve, la belleza se crea a través de la armonía y la autointrospección, ¿no? Este itinerario está diseñado específicamente para los amantes de los jardines, ¿no? Entonces muestra varios estilos, como son los jardines de rocas, los jardines de musgo, estos jardines paisajistas, jardines para pasear, ¿no? Bueno, Japón cuenta con uno de los más bonitos en el mundo. Y pues también en este itinerario el viajero tendrá encuentros con expertos en bonsáis, en jardinería, ¿no? Entonces realmente, y pues bueno, el viajero, algo que podrá disfrutar muchísimo, ¿no? El itinerario está dividido en 4 noches de estancia en Tokio, 2 noches en Ishikawa, 3 noches en Kioto, 2 noches en Shimane y 2 noches en Osaka, ¿no? Ya para regresar. Y bueno, lo más destacado en estos itinerarios, pues bueno, el viajero visitará 24 jardines, los más famosos que han sido seleccionados cuidadosamente, ¿no? En Tokio se podrá gozar de un encuentro privado con un maestro en bonsái, ¿no? En Ishikawa visitarán el jardín Kenrokuen de Kanazawa, que está dentro del top 3, está dentro del top 3 de los jardines más bonitos en Japón, ¿no? En Kioto se visitará sitios de patrimonio mundial, jardines en templos famosos, encuentros privados con diseñadores paisajistas. Entonces aquí, por ejemplo, se dedica un día, está enfocado en esta filosofía y el patrimonio de Shigemori es una arquitecta muy paisajista muy famosa en Japón. Matsuei Shimena, el Museo de Arte y Jardín Abachi, y en Okayama el Jardín Gakuen, que de hecho se debate con el Jardín de Kanazawa, ¿no? En uno de entre los más bonitos. Y bueno, en Osaka, pues bueno, podrán disfrutar de estos paisajes urbanos, el castillo y por supuesto el museo al aire libre. Ok, Okay. Hotelería seleccionaba, ¿no? En cada destino de acuerdo al perfil, ¿no? Y al perfil y detalle de este itinerario que está enfocado a los jardines japoneses. Okay, Eric, please explain us a little more about this itinerary.
Yes, thank you, Adriana. Well, basically, your explanation was already very clear, but just to add a few points. So, in Tokyo, as you mentioned, we visit several gardens, and each of them are quite different. So, we start with the one in the Imperial Palace. It's one of the famous gardens in Tokyo, and it's a great introduction to Japan and gardens at the same time, because it's near where the emperor is living. And then we move on to Hamarikyo Garden, a completely different kind of garden. Plus, then one of the highlights actually of Tokyo is the meeting with the bonsai master. So for this, we will travel a little bit outside of Tokyo, near Saitama, and there is a place called the Omiya Bonsai Art Museum, where they have so many bonsai and where you can meet the person who creates the bonsai. So I think that's really one of the highlights of the whole trip and of the stay in Tokyo. Also interesting is that we not only stay in Tokyo, but we go to Yokohama and Kamakura, two cities not far from Tokyo, and we visited some beautiful gardens there. I must say that Kamakura is actually quite famous for overseas travelers as well, and probably because of the giant Buddha. The Buddha is about 24-meter high. It's very impressive. It's quite beautiful setting as well. So I think that would be a nice addition. Plus the Hokoku-ji temple as well. It's a very peaceful temple to visit, and you can stroll around the different gardens. So that's a nice trip outside of Tokyo, but still stay in Tokyo and come back in the evening. Then when we move to Kanazawa, as you mentioned, we visit Kenroku Garden and another place that is called the Nomura house, and it's a house of a former samurai family. They have a very beautiful and very small garden. So you just sit and look at this small garden inside of the house. Plus, then we go to visit the geisha district. So here, again, we don't visit all the places in Kanazawa, but we focus on those that are interesting for garden lovers. And when we go to Kanazawa, then we stay at a ryokan, a little bit outside of Kanazawa, called Araya Totoan. That's a very traditional and very beautiful ryokan that has been in operation for more than 350 years. So very old, but very nice ryokan. I think, Adriana, you have visited this ryokan as well. Yeah. Then near Araya Totoan, there is a village called Eiheiji, where we actually visit two places. One called Eichi no Mori. It's a moss forest. And the other one is Natadera. It's a big temple complex, lost in the middle of nowhere in the countryside, but it's one of my favorite places in Japan. It's very beautiful, very quiet, very peaceful, and it's actually beautiful in every season. So whether you go in spring and you see all the greenery, or in autumn with the autumn leaves, it's really a very beautiful place to visit. And then we visit the Eiheiji temple, which is one of the most important temples in Japan. It's not famous for overseas travelers because it's really out of the way from the classic tours, but it's really one of the most important in the Japanese religion, one of the most important temples. It's the head temple of the Soto Zen sect, which is one of the main sects of Buddhism in Japan. I don't want to be too long, so I will skip Kyoto, but basically in Kyoto, again, we do a visit specifically focused on the gardens. So we skip some of the classic highlights and we visit the gardens. Plus, we're going to have a private encounter with a garden designer. And this person will explain everything about the Japanese gardens, show how they create, how they think about the gardens, and explain, of course, the different styles of gardens. The next day we will focus on Shigemori Mirei. He was an artist, let's say a garden artist in Kyoto, and he made many gardens. So we will visit a few of them. And then we move to Shimane. Again, Shimane is out of the beaten track for most of the tourists, but it has a very nice museum of art called the Adachi Museum of Art. And the garden of the Adachi Museum of Art is also a very famous garden. Actually, it was voted in the US Garden magazine as one of the top gardens in Japan for many years. So that's a very nice place to visit. Plus, we also stay at a ryokan again. It's called Minamikan. It's a very nice ryokan with a view over the lake. And of course, your clients will have a private hot spring bath for them to relax at the end of the day. So we visit around Shimane and Matsue, those two small cities nearby. And then we come back through Okayama. We visit the Korakuen Garden and then come back to Osaka. And then in Osaka, there is the famous castle of Osaka. There is a very interesting open-air museum where actually it's not about the garden, it's about the Japanese farmhouses. So they have collected old houses all over Japan, dismantled them, and reconstructed them in this open-air museum. So it's a garden, but it's also a kind of open-air museum to see the old traditional Japanese houses. And then we are staying in the Ritz-Carlton Osaka. And after that, on the last day, we will leave from Kansai International Airport, which is basically near Osaka. But if your clients are from Mexico and they want to fly directly, then we would recommend traveling back to Tokyo, stay one night in Tokyo, and then fly directly from Narita to Mexico.
Mexico. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, is there any question about this itinerary?
¿Alguna pregunta? Por favor, escríbanosla en el chat o también con toda la confianza habiliten su micrófono y nos las comparten. Uh-huh. Okay. Ha sido todo muy claro. Bueno, Eric nos explica súper bien, muy bien detallado. Thank you, Eric. Ok. Continuemos con nuestro tercer itinerario dedicado a los sitios que son Patrimonio Mundial de la UNESCO en Japón. Es un itinerario de 18 días y 17 días con 17 noches, ¿no? Y bueno, aquí el viajero descubrirá Japón de una manera divertida, educativa, a través de sus lugares culturales y naturales más importantes, ¿no? Que son los sitios Patrimonio Mundial de la UNESCO de Japón. Los 19 sitios culturales y 4 sitios denominados sitios de patrimonio natural en la lista de la UNESCO de Japón se han seleccionado los 10 mejores, ¿no? Para este itinerario. Es un itinerario diseñado para parejas y familias. Y bueno, en este viaje los llevarán a los rincones de Japón, incluidos Tokio, Kyoto, Nara, Hiroshima, pero también a la ciudad de montaña sagrada de Monte Koya, así como las ciudades de Nagasaki, Fukuoka y la isla del sur en Kyushu. Uh-huh. Entonces aquí en el mapa, ¿no? Para que se puedan ubicar, recuerden que también todos nuestros itinerarios están muy bien detallados con un mapa, con una tabla que se hace día por día de los lugares que se van a visitar, una guía muy completa y muy amigable para que puedan llevar consigo durante todo el viaje, ¿no? Entonces aquí este itinerario está dividido con 3 noches en Tokio, 2 noches en Takayama, 4 noches en Kioto, 1 noche en Monte Koya, 2 noches en Hiroshima, 1 noche en Fukuoka, 2 noches en Nagasaki y 2 noches en Osaka, ¿no? Quiero reiterar que todos nuestros itinerarios pueden ser personalizables, ¿no? Se pueden quitar visitas, poner visitas, ¿no? Entonces todo lo hacemos a la medida. lo más destacado, ¿no? Se visitarán los sitios Patrimonio Mundial de la UNESCO, ¿no? En Nikko, pues estaremos, bueno, tendremos esta parte de historia y naturaleza, ¿no? Con los pueblos antiguos de Takayama, ¿no? Templos de Kioto y Nara, ¿no? En Monte Koya. Todo va combinado, historia y naturaleza. Alojamiento, los mejores hoteles de lujo en Tokio y Kioto van a vivir de la experiencia del ryokan, que bueno, en Japón es algo que se tiene que hacer, se tiene que vivir, ¿no? Y pues bueno, como les mencionaba, la personalización, ¿no? De hacerlo, de incluir también estas visitas clásicas en Tokio y en Kioto. Okay, los hoteles que hemos seleccionado, y que bueno, ahorita Eric nos va a dar detalles sobre este itinerario y pues bueno, la hotelería que se ha seleccionado. Okay, please, Eric.
Thank you, Adriana.
Yeah.
Yes. First of all, I want to mention that this presentation is made for webinar. But if you are interested in having more details, of course, we created the detailed sample itineraries with day by day the sightseeing, the hotel, etc. So anybody who is interested can actually receive those detailed itineraries, and you will have the list of all the places that we visit with the pictures, etc. And each itinerary is about 20 pages, so very detailed. And we have this, of course, for the garden itineraries, for the golf, for the World Heritage sites, etc. And I will be very happy to send them to you upon request. So now that I explained this, I will quickly explain also about the trip for these World Heritage sites. So basically, we stay 2 nights in Tokyo, but of course, in Tokyo, there is no World Heritage site. So as soon as we arrive, we go to the hotel, we relax, and the next day we will move to Nikko. And Nikko is one of the very famous places to visit. It has a place called the Toshogu, which is the museum, the tomb of one of the emperor, the shogun, sorry, the Tokugawa Ieyasu. It's located in a very beautiful mountain setting. It's a lot of nature around it, and this shrine is one of the World Heritage sites because it belongs to the Japanese culture. Plus, it's really located in an amazing location. Plus, nearby there is the lake Chusenji, and where you can have beautiful views of nature and one of the largest waterfall in Japan. This waterfall is almost 100 meters tall. So if you visit in spring, you will have a huge waterfall, very impressive because all the snow is melting from the mountains and then gushing through this waterfall. So in the evening, we come back to Tokyo. It takes about 1 hour and a half, depending on the traffic. So it's a little bit far, but it's good to visit Nikko when you come to Japan. Even in our regular trips, we often recommend Nikko as a good way to go out of Tokyo and see a little bit something different. So I would really recommend for your clients, if they are interested in learning more about the history of Japan, to visit Nikko. Then the next day, we also take another day trip outside of Tokyo to Gunma Prefecture, and we visit the Tomioka Silk Mill. It's one of the first factories for producing silk in Japan. So this is included in the World Heritage Sites as a place of importance for the industry. And then after that, we will visit a temple that is not very famous temple, but they have a lot of the Daruma dolls. These are small dolls that you create, and then you make a wish. And then if your wish comes true, then you will paint the eyes of the doll. You can see more details in the itinerary that we can send you upon requests. Because I don't want to take too much of your time, I will continue the presentation the explanation quickly. From Tokyo, we moved to Takayama, and most of you probably already heard about Takayama. So we're going to stay at a ryokan. It's a nice luxury ryokan called Hidate Anaogi. Of course, your clients will have a room with private hot spring bath. And then the next day, we're going to visit in Takayama. It's an old city, and it has a lot of history. Plus, it's near the village of Shirakawa-go, which is the traditional village. And you can still see the old houses with the roof made of straw. And it's supposed to be one of the most beautiful villages in Japan. And it's also a World Heritage Site. So we come back to Takayama in the evening and stay another night at Hidate Anaogi. And then we move to Kyoto. And in Kyoto, there are so many World Heritage Sites. So we had to make a choice. So first we chose, of course, some temples, including the Tenryuji Temple in Arashiyama. This is the temple near the bamboo forest. I'm sure most of you know about the famous bamboo forest in Kyoto. And this temple is right next to the bamboo forest. Then we move to Ninnaji and Ryoanji Temple. These two temples are very different. And the Ryoanji Temple is the temple where you have a beautiful rock garden. Very quiet, very peaceful place. And then after that, we visit the Kinkakuji Temple, which is the opposite. It's very opulent temple, which is completely covered in gold. The next day, we take again another full day trip in Kyoto to visit more temples and the Nijojo Castle, which is the former residence of the shogun in Kyoto. It's a very large castle, but it's all on the ground floor. So there is no stories in this castle. It's all on the same level. And then we continue to Fushimi Inari Taisha, which probably most of you are familiar with the corridor of Tori, these red gates. So here you have over 10,000 tories, and you can walk around. It's located also on a small mountain, so it's a nice place to stroll around. And then after that, we go out of Kyoto to Uji. And in Uji, there is the Byodo-in Temple. And Byodo-in Temple is, it's a very old temple, actually, that's built almost 1,000 years ago. And very important temple in Japan. Very beautiful as well. Because it's outside of the city, it has a lot of space. So there is a garden, there is different halls. It's a whole complex that can take about 2 hours to visit. And then when we come back, we will have a private dinner with geisha. So the geisha is also kind of a heritage of Japan. It's intangible cultural heritage. And I think this is a great way to learn more about the culture. So your clients will arrive at the special restaurant for dinner with geisha. They will have a private room. They will be seated. Then the geisha will arrive. They will first have a chat to break the ice, small conversation, etc. Of course, we always have a guide to be there as a translator. So your clients can speak to the guy in Spanish, and then the guide will translate to the geisha in Japanese, and then the geisha will reply to the guide and back. So I think having a private dinner with geisha is something that is expensive, of course. It's about $1,500 for a couple, but it's really a unique experience of meeting someone who is very knowledgeable in the arts, in the dance, music, and also the art of hospitality. Again, I think, Adriana, you had the chance to come to Japan and experience for yourself. Yeah. So you can maybe tell a little word about the geisha experience if you think we have time.
No, maravillosa. Es algo que, exacto, es una experiencia única, ¿no? Estar conviviendo con estas mujeres maravillosas, pero ¿qué les puedo decir? Algo imperdible, ¿no? La reunión con las con las geishas. Es maravilloso, ¿no? Ver toda la preparación que tienen ellas es maravillosa, ¿no? De arte. Sí,
They are
muy
very
bien.
graceful also.
Sí.
So after Kyoto, then we moved to another World Heritage Site called Mount Koya, the Koya Mountain. And Koya Mountain is located south of Kyoto. It takes about 3 hours, so it's a little bit far. And it's located deep in the mountains. But it's a small city with over 100 temples. And these temples have a long history. They were created by a monk called Kobodaishi, who actually founded this city in the mountains. And now this city has been a sacred city for over 1,000 years. The specificity of Mount Koya is that you can actually stay at the temples and you will have a real experience of Buddhism from the inside. So you stay at the temple, the monastery. It's actually quite comfortable. And although you sleep on the futon, on the tatami mats, it's a very elaborate monastery. It's not like the monasteries you can see in Southeast Asia, in Burma, Cambodia, Myanmar, etc. It's Japanese style. You can actually even have a TV in your room, and if you want to order a beer at night, you can order a beer. But the next morning, you have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and at 6 o'clock, you will participate in the morning service with the monks. You will hear the chanting, you will see the elaborate rituals, etc., and that is very special. Plus, I forgot to mention, but the night before, you have a vegetarian dinner, which is the same dinner as the monks, except this one is very elaborate as well. So although it's only vegetable and tofu, it's served on beautiful trays and lacquerware, etc., and it's very well presented, and it's made with a lot of care. So although there is no meat, no fish, it's actually delicious food. And the breakfast is the same. It's a traditional shojin breakfast. So again, tea, rice, tofu, and other vegetarian items. So it can be a little bit tricky for the clients who are really set on their continental breakfast. But of course, if they're still hungry, there are some cafes in town. So once they meet with the guide, they can have a real breakfast at the cafe as well. And then after this one night in Mount Koya, then we move to Osaka. And from Osaka, we transfer by bullet train to Hiroshima. Hiroshima, there is, of course, the Peace Memorial and Park. So this is where the atomic bomb exploded. And this is, of course, part of the World Heritage in Japan as well. So it's a little bit of a sad visit because you learn about this tragic history. But then in the afternoon, we move to Miyajima. And Miyajima, it's a small island near Hiroshima that is very pretty. There are no cars on the island. And this is where you have this famous floating torii. You know, the red gate that looks like it's floating on the water. And you have a lot of deers on the island. They are tame deers. So, I mean, they are wild, but they are very gentle. So you can see the deers. You can even pet them if you want. And I think this is a very good combination with Hiroshima, because Hiroshima visit can be a little bit heavy. And then seeing Miyajima, the beautiful Miyajima, will lift your spirits. And then from Hiroshima, we continue towards the southwest of Japan and towards the Kyushu Island, and we arrive in Fukuoka. And in Fukuoka, again, we are going to visit World Heritage sites that are about the industrialization of Japan. So I won't go into the detail, but basically there are ancient factories, etc., where you can learn about the industry in Japan. And then we will visit also a shrine and a museum as well. And then we stay at the Grand Hyatt Fukuoka. So Grand Hyatt Fukuoka, I would say, is a 4.5-star hotel. It's basically the best hotel in town. So we are confident that your clients will enjoy it. And then after that, we moved to Nagasaki. And in Nagasaki, it's, of course, one of the places where the second place where the bomb exploded. But here we focus on a different side of history. We focus on the Catholic, the Christian history of Japan. So I think because Mexico is also a Christian country, and you have some, probably some clients who are interested in the Christian history, that would be a very interesting visit to learn more about the arrival of the first Christians to Japan and how they tried to develop the Christianity in Japan, although they were persecuted at the time. It was forbidden to be a Christian. So they had hidden, they called them hidden Christians, and they had hidden churches, etc. So that is a very interesting visit if you are interested in this kind of history. There was actually a famous movie released 2 years ago called Silence, and we would recommend watching this movie before taking this trip.
Wow.
After this visit, we will visit again a beautiful garden, and then we stay at the Garden Terrace Nagasaki, which is it's a nice hotel, beautifully designed and with beautiful views also looking over the sea. It's developed by a famous architect called Kengo Kuma, which we explained in the last webinar as well. So one of the most famous Japanese architects designed this hotel. And then we continue the next day again with a more history of Christianity. We'll visit the museum dedicated to the 26 martyrs of Japan. Well, I won't go into the detail, but basically they are Christians who were persecuted in the 17th century. And then we move to Nagasaki port. We take a ferry to visit Gunkanjima Island, which is part of the industrialization of Japan. It's a small island, and the island was used as a mining place. It's very special. They actually shot a James Bond film there. It's very photogenic, but we don't have too much time, so I will not elaborate more. Then we come back to Osaka, and in Osaka, there is something that is very impressive. It's actually the tomb of the emperors, and this tomb is not a small tomb. It's a huge tomb that is shaped as a keyhole, and it's 500 meters long. So it's very big. I wish I could show you the pictures, but I don't have access. I cannot share the pictures right now. But if you would like to know more about these tombs, then please contact either myself or Adriana, and then we'll send you the more detailed itinerary.
Claro.
Finally, we will visit Osaka as well. And in Osaka, the Osaka Castle, as I mentioned before. And then we visit Dotonbori, which is a district in Osaka, very lively district. So this is not part of the World Heritage Sites, but it's a famous place in Osaka, great for the people who love food, gourmet, etc. There are many small stands where you can enjoy different kind of foods. And they also have some very nice places for sushi, crab, and so on. And then this is day 17, and then on the 18th we will fly out of Osaka. So again, if your clients would like to fly directly from Tokyo to Mexico, then we would actually either take a domestic flight connecting Tokyo and fly, or we would travel back to Tokyo, stay one night in Tokyo, and fly the next morning directly from Tokyo.
Perfect. Very complete. Gracias, Eric. Teníamos que hablar mucho sobre todo sobre todos estos sitios que son patrimonio de la humanidad en Japón. Vale muchísimo la pena. Muchísimas gracias por esta valiosa información. Y vamos a pasar a nuestro cuarto y último itinerario, que trata de los campos de golf en Japón. Sí, realmente yo estoy asombrada de toda la que hay, y que, bueno, es uno de los pasatiempos favoritos de los japoneses desde 1980, y créanme que el número de la calidad de los campos y el golf es insuperable. El viajero quedará impresionado por los estándares de hospitalidad que se muestran en los campos de golf japoneses. El itinerario está creado para estos amantes del golf, pues bueno, sugiriendo esta ruta ideal que es Tokio, Kanazawa, Kioto y los hermosos destinos que son menos conocidos, como Ibaraki y Miyako. Entonces, el viajero podrá disfrutar de un viaje perfecto a Japón, combinando estos visitas tradicionales, ¿no? Y combinado con estos campos de golf, ¿no? Que son muy, muy pintorescos por todo el país. Y bueno, lo más destacado, pues bueno, todo se centra en los campos del golf, ¿no? Y también el viajero podrá gozar de 7 rondas, ¿no? De 7 rondas en diferentes campos, ¿no? Entonces, please, Eric, can you help us with the information of the golf courses?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
So, as you mentioned, basically, I think this is the perfect trip for people who come to Japan and want to combine golf and normal sightseeing as well. So this itinerary was designed in collaboration with our sister company called the Golf Japan. So basically, we have the Real Japan as a DMC for cultural journeys, and we have the Golf Japan as a specific DMC for golf in Japan. We have created this itinerary together, and we will operate it together as well. It's basically our sister company for golf. And here, when we created this itinerary, we wanted you to, of course, do the most important places in Tokyo, but also visit the best golf courses in Japan. So the first place is called the Royal Golf Club in Ibaraki. It takes about 1 hour and a half from Tokyo, but basically 1 hour, but we will stay there. So you arrive in Tokyo and then you straight away transfer to the Royal Golf Club. They have a beautiful hotel, and of course you will have access to their golf field. The next day we move nearby to Oarai Golf Club. It's another golf club not far in Ibaraki. And this one is one of the most famous golf clubs in all over Japan and even in the world. It's actually part of the top 100 golf courses in the world, and designed by a very famous Japanese golf course designer called Seiichi Inoue. So again, the second day will be another round of golf, and then we move to Tokyo. In Tokyo, we do some classic sightseeing, and for 2 days. So here we try to really combine some art, some museums, some shrines, and some gardens as well. So 2 days of sightseeing in Tokyo. Then we move to Niigata and Miyako. So this is in the countryside. On the way from Tokyo to Niigata, we will take a train, and then we will have a private car. We visit a small village called Obuse, a very beautiful small village of Japan. So that gives you a good contrast with the big city of Tokyo. And then we stay at an hotel called Akakura Kanko Hotel. It's an old hotel from the 1949, but it's been very beautifully renovated, and the views over the countryside and the mountains are very beautiful. Those views, you will enjoy them the next day when you do the golf course in Akakura. So this hotel is actually located on a golf course, and the golf course was also created by Seiichi Inoue, which is the famous Japanese golf designer. Then we move, so we stay 2 nights in Akakura Kanko Hotel. Then we move to Kanazawa, and we just do half-day sightseeing, a short sightseeing of the Geisha district, the Omicho Market, the Kenrokuen, and the 21st Century Museum. And we stay at the Hyatt Centric Kanazawa, which is the latest hotel that just opened in August last year. And it's a very nice hotel. Of course, it's 4-star, not 5-star, but this is the best hotel in town. And then in Kanazawa, we will have 1 day of golf in Katayamazu, which is 1 hour south of Kanazawa, and a beautiful area where you can see the Mount Hakusan on one side, and you can see a big lake on the other side. Then we come back to Kanazawa to stay over. And then the next day, we move to the north of Kanazawa, to Noto. Noto is a peninsula located about 1 hour from Kanazawa as well, and a very beautiful area that looks a little bit like the Bretagne in France, if you are familiar. And again, this Noto Country Club is the golf course, and it's one of the most prestigious course in the area. They are part of the circuit of the Japan Golf Federation, and they had many tournaments played there. So we come back again to Kanazawa. We stay again 1 night in Kanazawa. Then the next day we move to Kyoto. And in Kyoto, again, we try to combine sightseeing experiences. So sightseeing, of course, to Fushima Inari Taisha, to the famous Kiyomizu-dera Temple, to the Geisha district of Gion, plus having a private experience of meeting a monk and having a private meditation session. So I think this is a great combination of sightseeing and experiences all in 1 day. And then the next day we will do golf in Shiga. So Shiga is about 35 minutes north of Kyoto. And again, it's beautiful sceneries with a lake not far. And it was designed again by Seiichi Inoue, the famous golf designer. And I think this one is one of the more challenging golf places. And then the next day, we again do another round of golf, this time near Kobe in Hyogo Prefecture. So it takes about 1.5 hours from Kyoto, but it's one of the most famous courses in Japan as well. It's called the Taiheiyo Roko Golf Course. So again, 1 day of golf, and then the next day we will transfer from the hotel to the Kansai airport, and then we fly out of Kansai. Of course, once again, if your clients want to fly from Tokyo, then we'll add 1 more night in Tokyo. And then one last thing I wanted to mention about golf, because golf is quite different in Japan. Basically, in Japan, you spend a whole day at the golf course. They don't really do half days. So you arrive in the morning and you have the whole preparation, tea time, etc. And then you will do the first 9 holes in the morning. Then you take a break. So usually people have lunch break. And then you will be given a time slot to restart for the 9 last holes. And then you do the second round, the 9 holes, and then you finish around 3:30. And if you want, you can actually have a private bath at the golf course. Many golf courses have communal baths and some private bath. So you enjoy the onsen at the golf course, and then around 5 o'clock you finish. So 1 round of golf takes a whole day in Japan. Again, if you are interested in learning more about golf in Japan, I will be happy to share some information from our sister company, the Golf Japan. So feel free to contact Adriana or myself, and then we will send you this information.
Exacto, muy diferente, pero muchísimas gracias, Eric, por compartir esta información. Por favor, ¿tienen alguna duda sobre estos itinerarios de los que hemos hablado esta tarde? Ok. A ver, voy a dejar de compartir para ver el chat. Okay. Pues creo que fue bastante completo, todo muy bien detallado. Muchísimas gracias a todos. Por favor, cualquier información que quieran, tienen mi contacto, está el contacto también de Eric y con mucho gusto nos ponemos, trabajamos su solicitud, ¿no? Y pues respondemos a todas sus dudas, ¿no? Eric, would you like to say something to all the audience?
Yes, well, I just would like to thank everybody for participating to the webinar. I hope it was informative and interesting. And thank you, Adriana, for organizing this webinar and the great presentation.
Thank you, Eric. Muchísimas gracias a todos y seguimos en contacto. Hasta luego.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Gracias.
And thank you, Veronica, for joining as well.
Yes. Hola, Vero. Gracias. Gracias, Silvia. Y a todos. Muchísimas gracias por